Want to welcome everyone today to today's installment of the Nyan One Partner Positives webinar series. Today with our friends at iWave. So I got Trent here with me from the iWave team. Really excited for today's final partner webinar of the year. So we're going to go out on a real high note. So before we get started in terms of our amazing content, just a little bit about who we are and kind of framing a little bit about today. So on the next slide, and talk a bit about who exactly is Nyan One. One more click, Trent, in terms of get that nice, beautiful spaceship there. So Nyan One. Actually, if we, I guess the spaceship lost in the translation, but basically Nyan One is a technology. Hey, there it is, a technology ecosystem of software and services designed for mission-driven organizations like yours. So we do a lot of different things. We're going to be focusing in on a few key items today, but on the next slide, just a little bit of an overview of what we do and who we are. Nyan One is a comprehensive ecosystem of several different products and services. We're going to be touching on Nyan CRM and RallyBound today. Nyan CRM is a donor management and relationship management tool, does a lot of different stuff, has a lot of great integrations, and we're going to be talking about two of those today. And RallyBound is a amazing, fantastic peer-to-peer tool that works with some of the biggest organizations out there, Michael J. Fox, cystic fibrosis. But Nyan One also does back-end management, giving days, client case management, arts and ticketing software for that specific crowd, web design. And then what really kind of sets us apart is the larger ecosystem that we curate for you. So we actually certify software that integrates into our products. Not everyone does that. And definitely no one does it the way that we do in terms of a focus on the customer experience for optimization. That also extends out to our consultant partners as well. All of those are curated specifically to the nonprofit space and have to be vetted. So let's say your organization is utilizing iWave at Nyan CRM RallyBound together and you want to get some help in terms of how to understand the data from a major donor cultivation standpoint. We have people that can do that. And it's working. We've raised over $10 billion to date, serve more than 30,000 nonprofits of all different sizes. So really, really excited to showcase a few pieces of our ecosystem today. On the next slide, we're just going to go over a few housekeeping items. First, and I think one more click, Trent, will get us to the text there. This is and will be recorded and then put on our YouTube channel. So we'll be sending things out in a follow-up in terms of not only potential interest in what we're talking about today, but just to make sure that you have these resources. We want to make sure that you're ending your year strong. 31% of gifts come in December, so being able to make sure that you have things to help you is really important to us. So there's also a Q&A. And if you want to follow along on social media, I might be tweeting out while Trent is talking using the hashtag P2P-Gems. P2P Gems. So with that said, I want to hand it over to Trent for kind of kicking off what our content is today. And we're really, really grateful for you to join us for today's presentation on uncovering your hidden gems, leveraging year-end giving in your major gifts strategy.
Great, thanks, Tim. And thanks everyone for joining us. It's great to be here as the wrapping up of the webinar series for this year, saving, as Tim said, saving the best for last. I'll take that as a feather in our cap. Maybe it's last but not least is maybe more appropriate, but we'll take it either way. So again, thanks for joining us. And as Tim mentioned, we're going to really talk today about some of the things that are going on right now in the year-end giving and all the activity that surrounds it, and also talking about the P2P gems or the hidden gems. How the activity that's happening right now will hopefully enable you to uncover some gems. A little bit of an agenda here for you, and what we're going to go through. So we'll do some formal introductions. I'm going to hand things back over to Tim actually to kick things off, just to talk a bit more detail around peer-to-peer campaigns and specifically some of the activity and results that we've seen from Givingtuesday. Tim and the Nyan One group were lucky enough to be part of that activity pretty closely, so he's going to share some information there. We're going to move through that into some of the more iWave-oriented information around fundraising intelligence and how iWave fits into that fundraising intelligence and helps deliver on that intelligence. And at the end of it, we're really going to tie it all back to, those peer-to-peer campaigns, the Givingtuesday and year-end activity that are happening, and how, again, we can help you find hidden gems or more intel in the data that's being generated and probably already exists in your databases today. So with that, I'm going to get us moving through. So for those who haven't met either Tim or I, this is what we look like. So the next time we cross paths, you'll be able to recognize us. I'm not really as long as I look in that circle. So just wanted to point that out. Somebody tried to help me with some graphics here, but I'm not really that tall. So peer-to-peer campaigns, we definitely wanted to kick things off because we know obviously there's a lot of that happening now, and as Tim mentioned, 30+% of giving happens in December, so a lot of that's going to be coming in on those types of platforms. But I'm going to let Tim pick this up and talk specifically around some of the activity that they see as it relates to the RallyBound platform.
Yeah, and peer-to-peer campaigns are fascinating. It's one of the fastest growing segments when it comes to fundraising. You have your traditional major gift engagement, you have your annual funds, you have your galas, but peer-to-peer is different because it sometimes scares fundraising folks because you're not completely in control. And it's because you're relying on the champions in your organization that don't necessarily work for you. They are volunteers, they are board members, they are just people who love your mission and want to fundraise on your behalf. And we're seeing this in a lot of different ways. Kind of the traditional campaigns that you see and what Peer-to-Peer Forum, for instance, analyzes top 30 peer-to-peer campaigns. And a lot of those are the traditional run, walk events. You also might see people doing, other types of campaigns that are more do-it-yourself events. So somebody might be doing a birthday party, or they might be getting people excited for through Facebook. That's a big one that we've been seeing a lot, is the Facebook fundraising. And really, at the end of the day, all it means is that these are people who are asking folks to donate on behalf of your organization. So on the next slide, a little bit of engagement overview is that fundraisers, the people who are actually doing the campaign, they're creating a page on a platform like RallyBound, they're really, really key to actual growth of your peer-to-peer campaign. So there's a few different points of view. We always talk about gratitude and donor stewardship, but you have to actually take it a little bit step further when it comes to the fundraisers themselves. Being able to keep someone in your orbit and coming back and continuing to fundraise for your organization is actually really, really important. In an analysis of year-over-year giving, we actually saw that when you keep somebody to come back to your campaign year over year, revenue continues to amplify and grow. And especially once you hit year 3 into year 4, 130% growth. And donation revenue is interesting. We also analyzed not just the growth of overall giving, but the actual numbers and average donations. And the growth is most evident in the first year in terms of the size of the gifts that may come in, but in terms of average size of those gifts. But then what we see is that as people get more comfortable with using a platform like RallyBound, being able to reinitiate their campaign, being able to actually have all their contacts even in the database to quickly reference and maybe tweet at or engage on social media or LinkedIn or anything like that, that people get more comfortable, and they also realize that, hey, it's time to fundraise again. And I've even seen this because I got to use RallyBound a few months ago for my wife's memorial charity for my sister-in-law. And so it was really interesting to look at even retention rates when it comes to that type of stuff. So making sure that you're creating materials, you're creating things for your fundraisers specifically, and empowering them with the right tools is really critical, as well as a really comfortable and easy platform to use. Now, where we're seeing this most evidently on the next slide is something like Givingtuesday. So Nyan One participated in Givingtuesday in a few different ways. So if you're not familiar at this point, Givingtuesday was an event that was launched about 8 years ago by the 92nd Street Y in New York City as a day that focuses in on philanthropy, generosity, giving, volunteering, just overall caring of folks. And so it has had a growing and increasing impact. So Nyan One supported it by providing data from all the different Nyan One products. And overall, we saw about 36 million generated and then 511 million processed online. But when you also take into account offline gifts, it was about $1.9 billion this year on one day. And that's around the world. There's tons of Givingtuesday elements that people were doing. And what was interesting when we look at the peer-to-peer side, because we did a webinar with Nyan One consultant Julia Campbell, as well as Givingtuesday themselves, Kat Murphy-Times, their marketing person. And she recommended if you were going to do anything when it comes to giving and trying to solicit people on Givingtuesday, to focus in on peer-to-peer, because then you're having that amplification. So we saw a lot of that on Facebook, for instance. I think they did about 120 million on that platform. And it also helps when systems integrate with Facebook fundraising, such as RallyBound, which does sync into Facebook. And so we saw things like recurring gifts average about 2 per organization on Givingtuesday itself. And then the average online donation for RallyBound was $147 for just like each individual donation. But offline checks, about $3,000 for RallyBound, which was the highest of all the different platforms. Nyan CRM saw a lot of activity too, and I think their average gift was it was about the same when it came to RallyBound, and so that was just kind of interesting when these things also start to talk to each other, being able to kind of link these systems together. Now, why is Givingtuesday important? It's because it helps kick off the giving season that we're entering right now. And so December is a very, very intensive time. A lot of people are typically even waiting to make their gifts at the end of the year and budgeting for that type of thing. So being able to ensure that you're recruiting champions for your organization to help people get excited to give to your mission is really, really key. But with all this noise, how do we get through that? How do we cut through that and find the hidden gems? Hashtag P2P gems, by the way. So Trent, how about I hand it on over to you and we start to see, great, there's all this activity. It can be very chaotic, a lot of different emails or communications going around and meetings. Where do you focus though? Where do you focus?
Yeah, thanks again, Tim, for taking us through that. Before I jump into the more of the product-oriented description or explanation to what you just brought up, I wanted to kind of just dovetail into some of the stats and details you've just shared with us. So one of the things that iWave has been focusing on, and we're part of the Giving Institute, so we kind of look at the report that the Giving Institute and Giving USA produces and just kind of tie into some of those metrics and or trends that we're seeing. I share with the group here today some of these details because I think it amplifies what you just mentioned, right? How do we really find the hidden gems? How do we sift through the data? We're seeing things, and we've seen this for the last couple of years actually, where overall giving is leveling off. I think a lot of that's driven by the individuals or the number of individuals going down, and what that's doing is, at the end of the day, we don't necessarily love to use the word competition, but it's creating the competition and increasing the competition for the donors' mind share and wallet share at the end of the day. So it's something that I think amplifies further that need for great tools like we're going to talk about today. And certainly there are others in the marketplace, but just thinking about the tools to be able to leverage the data and the information that's in your systems, whether it's there today or it's going to be accumulated through the activity happening in the next few weeks. So, what we've seen at iWave is are a few things, and I'm going to kind of use different terms that are on this slide. We kind of talk about organizations not having enough intel, And I'm not sure it's the fact that they don't have enough, or we don't have enough intel, or it's more in the sense that we don't have the right intel. So ultimately, either way, however you describe it, what we're seeing is that organizations are making smaller asks from a major gift perspective, because it helps increase that confidence in being able to close on that gift. We're also seeing that activity, higher level of face-to-face or in-person activity increases conversion, which, could lead to just putting more bodies and putting more feet on the street to have those conversations. But if we look at it from another angle, leveraging the tools and data that are at our disposal can potentially help reduce the number of face-to-face visits. If someone can be more informed with the intelligence and the information that's available to them, it may not take that long. It may not take that many visits to establish the level of comfort and confidence to make that gift ask. So just a little bit of perspective for you. iWave's been helping organizations elevate their confidence from a major gift perspective for almost 30 years now. Early 1990s is when we first began. And here's just a smattering of organizations that we work with. I kind of share this slide because it speaks to the fact that we work with all kinds of different nonprofits, higher ed institutions, healthcare organizations, arts and culture organizations. And again, this is a short list of our just about 3,000 organizations that we work with across North America. And as you've probably guessed, we work pretty closely with Nyan and Nyan CRM. So here's a quote from Greg Fitzgerald talking about what Tim's going to share with us in a guided tour in a few minutes, how Nyan CRM and iWave and the other Nyan One platforms work together to really facilitate better use of the data and do it in an efficient way. So I want to share that with you. So it's not just me sitting here telling you we're fantastic. We do have pretty good feedback from our clients that are using all these tools as well. I just kind of wanted to move into thinking about what iWave brings to the table as we think about all the activity through peer-to-peer platforms and year-end activity, and really all year-round activity that's happening to generate information and generate data. One of the major things that iWave delivers is the ability to do wealth screening. And I personally even hesitate to use the term wealth screening, although that's what it's referred to as today. I think it's more about philanthropic screening. And from an iWave perspective, we look at wealth screening as the ability to help identify individuals that have the greatest potential of being a major gift donor. That doesn't just look at wealth. Certainly that's an important part. Does someone have the capacity or the wealth to be a major gift prospect or donor? But we also look at their propensity. Do they show a philanthropic pattern? So if just because someone has capacity doesn't mean they're looking to give that away. So we look at capacity, we look at propensity, and we also look at affinity. So does someone with capacity who's got a philanthropic pattern line up with your cause or someone else's cause? And those three keys, as we call them, become really critical pieces of our wealth screening that ultimately help someone find the major gift prospects in the data, whether those be in the existing data and contacts you have, or in the midst of those new contacts that are being generated through peer-to-peer platforms and all the year-end activity that's about to accumulate. I like to share this next slide because I think it's an interesting visual. It caught my attention when I first depicted the idea nicely. We call it finding the hidden gems. I think that's a better way to say needle in a haystack. It's a bit more marketing oriented as hidden gems, but I think we're all familiar with the old adage of finding the needle in the haystack. So life without screening, you've got this giant haystack. How do you find what it is you're looking for there? Screening really helps bring those higher likelihood donor prospects to bear and start to put some faces on them, really. So within the iWave fundraising intelligence, you can start to understand who those individuals are and how to engage with them more effectively. As we tie this back to, again, the year-end giving and all the activity that's going on, at the end of the day, that's going to generate a lot of information, a lot of data, and I think that's a big thing. And certainly from my perspective, I see the reams of data that gets accumulated every day. How do we use that data and turn it into intelligence that we can actually take action on? And again, Tim's going to take us through one scenario of how that can flow through. But when we think about all this, and the thought here is that if you've got all that data sitting there from year-end activity, it's really important to go ahead and screen that as potentially a first step. How will you most effectively identify where you need to spend your time? We're all living in a space today where we get finite resources, more to do than time to do it. So take advantage of the tools and technologies available to you to be able to really take advantage of the data and information that's being generated in your space. One last piece before I hand it back to Tim for a guided tour. I wanted to share this with you. Another visual representation of the iWave screening and the power of iWave screening is what we call insights. Really what this is a segmentation of your prospect or your donor base to help identify those hidden gems. If you look in the upper left, we've got hidden gems identified, which are really those individuals that live in your data today that are, from an outside perspective or from an iWave perspective, are great philanthropists. They're engaged, they've got capacity, they've got philanthropic patterns, and they've got alignment with a mission like yours. But for some reason, they may not be as engaged with you as they are with others. We consider those to be the biggest opportunities. On the upper right, we've got distinguished philanthropists, and those are, again, great individuals on the outside or within the iWave realm, but also internally, they are those that you have great engagement with. So I won't go through this whole quadrant, but the iWave screening not only helps you identify those hidden gems, it also can help inform your stewardship or your cultivation cycle. How do you most appropriately engage with the different types of individuals and donors that exist within that database you have today and that database that will develop over time? So, when we think about all this, it's important to think about the screening as not a point in time or not a static thing, but something that should be happening on a regular cadence, because the data that's informing all of this, segmentation is moving and is changing. So that's a bit of a whirlwind tour through iWave screening and why it's relevant now, especially with the accumulation of all the data. I want to hand it back over to Tim, who's going to take us through a tour so it can become a little bit more concrete as we move through the end of the presentation.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and share my side of the screen. And so the key element to keep in mind around peer-to-peer donors themselves is that they have, the reason we want to zero in on the hidden gems in terms of that is that a lot of times these, especially first-time donors, are going to have less of an affinity with your organization and more of an affinity with the person who asked them to give. And so it is extremely key that you zero in and create a specialized stewardship plan for these types of donors. And again, because people have limited capacity, the idea of who should I start with first is going to be of key here, as well as what can we do differently for different types of people. So the scenario that we're going to walk through today that is kind of surrounding the Nyan One ecosystem is about data amplification when you're using a peer-to-peer fundraising platform. So we're going to talk a bit about RallyBound, and then we're going to talk about how it interacts with an organization's database of record. Now, RallyBound works with a lot of different databases. So especially given that iWave works with a few different CRM providers too, it should be noted that everything that we're talking about here when we talk about how it interacts with Nyan CRM can also apply to Salesforce too. And so RallyBound works with both, pretty cool. iWave works with both, pretty cool. So the concepts here are about once it hits your database of record, how can you just really kind of kick it into high gear? And so the idea is that basic demographic and donation data, event registration data is going to flow into something like Nyan CRM, and then iWave can then kick into gear and start to scan against that type of data specifically. So you'd be able to then have a little bit more of an insight on a donor persona of, okay, this is a person who has an affinity for this other champion of our organization. Can we somehow reference that person when we're doing outreach or setting up a meeting and saying, hey, what interested you about our mission? Was it because, you know, Bill asked you, or do you actually care about what we do too? And so let's actually kind of walk through this in a very concrete way. So a little bit about RallyBound itself, which has been serving organizations all over the world for several years now. And what's really, really cool about RallyBound is its flexibility and it's just the way that you can have different types of events. So even looking here, this is the Pacific Ocean kind of demo site that you can have. And so this would be like your nonprofit, and then you can find different events, start creating pages, donate, really big hero, beautiful images here. People can log in, they can start to share. And what's really nifty is that you can have DIY events, you can have those memorial events, or your traditional kind of 5K events too. So if we even look at the peer-to-peer 5K, dad jokes abound over here. You'd be able to have some really cool things like basic event information, registrations, and donations. And this is key because when it syncs over to Nyan CRM, for instance, you could see people who registered for the event, such as that they're going to run, like this person here, or that they're donating or doing both. And so you can have leaderboards, you can have specialized team fundraising, you can drill down in terms of, you know, maybe let's check out the resistance here in terms of the top teams. Okay, great. You know, Chewy Baka here is doing something. I'd be able to have, you know, purchase tickets, join fundraisings, share, lots and lots of different configurations that you can have. And so the flexibility is one of the key things here, including even embedding video, which we're seeing is one of the kind of the key ways that people are starting to engage folks. And if I was an actual fundraiser, I'd be able to have a portal where I can import my contacts, start emailing them, start engaging them. And then the moment that those people make donations or register for the race, because of the integration with a platform like Nyan CRM, Salesforce, this can get automatically transferred over into the database of record. And if that's an existing donor, great, it'll just add that to the person's record without creating a duplicate. But if it's a brand new person, that's actually where I think that something like iWave can really kick into high gear. So basics of once you connect a platform like RallyBound for extensive peer-to-peer engagement, so many different campaigns, you can even we even rolled out a special Givingtuesday template this year, which we were pretty excited about. And so once this data actually sinks in to something like Nyan CRM, you're going to be able to see it right on the record. So maybe let's take a look at some recent donors. So this is Nyan CRM's administrative backend if you haven't seen this. And so you can take a look at Robert here, for instance, and go, okay, how did he come in? What's the basic information here? Maybe let's check out a timeline of donations. Oh, 10,000 in July, and then gave again in December to our Hoot for Hope 5K example here. And so all this information is going to flow in here, but what's also nifty is that you can even have iWave scores that exist right on the record within Nyan CRM. So if I actually clicked into the record, I'm going to be able to see detailed information. I can actually even go over to iWave and click into a much deeper profile there, which is pretty cool. But even living within the record, I'd be able to see, okay, I have an iWave score of 4, propensity rating, affinity rating. Typically, this person's donating to arts and cultural organizations, and you know, what's the potential capacity to give that this person has, as well as ticking off a few key boxes. All of this can be done and put on the record in a few different ways. The two key ways that data can get onto a person's record, like Robert here, is first, you can do an individual lookup. So I'd be able to actually just go, okay, I want to do an iWave score. let me search for this person right here. Who should I be filtering down on? And then either type their name in or be able to just kind of click on them right here. You can also kind of engage this from the record as well. The other more interesting one, in my opinion, because again, we're trying to save time here, right, is the fact that you can initiate a bulk scoring request. And this is actually where it's really key when it comes to an integration with something like RallyBound. Because when I'm scanning the database, the reason that we put so much effort into how we certify our programs is that anytime we have a new integration enter our ecosystem, we actually analyze its impact on how it might affect everything else that's come before it. So when RallyBound started syncing into Nyan CRM, for instance, we started analyzing, okay, how is that going to affect when somebody integrates with an accounting system? How is that going to affect something like wealth screening? And so even when I'm putting like the batch name, I can put like RallyBound focus or something like that. And what I'd be able to do is then analyze it against a bulk score group. So you basically, what happens is that you can do a batch update in the system and drill down and query down. And I'm going to show you how you can actually do that to give ultimate flexibility around not just RallyBound data, but pretty much anything that exists in the database of record. And then all you do is say, okay, everybody that has the bulk score group of 4, let's initiate a scan. And then it's just going to hunt out, look for everybody that meets that criteria, and then add a iWave score right onto their profile. Very cool. We're also going to talk about strategically what you can do once it's on the profile too. It's not just about the data, it's what to do with the data. So if I wanted to actually initiate this, I can use native Nyan CRM functionality to bulk update and add that grouping onto a person's record. So there's a highly flexible report that you'd be able to use. And so if I wanted to do something like maybe everybody who's donated to the RallyBound campaign, our peer-to-peer campaign, very simple. I'd be able to just choose this, load the criteria, and I can actually even choose other types of things, such as maybe donation amount. That's one way that you can do this. Last donation amounts, event registrations amounts. I can zero in on the people who registered to run versus the people who donated. I can look at demographic data. So if I needed to look at something like, like a volunteer who's been working with us and zeroing in on that, we'd be able to do it. And so there's a lot of different things that you'd be able to engage. And so, and somebody asked in terms of like, hey, how does this generally work? iWave works with a lot of different platforms. It works with Salesforce, for instance. So the basic idea and approach here is applicable across any database of record. We're just happen to be using Nyan CRM as our example here. And so a lot of cool things that you can do. You could zero in and run the report and then just start to analyze against this. And then I'd be able to do a bulk update against this, confirm the accounts. I want to edit the accounts. And then I would be basically say, okay, anybody that has a 4 for my iWave score, go ahead and add this to their record to opt into that group. So very easy. So once that's on the record itself and I have those scores, then there's a few cool things that you can start to do. The one that I think is the most key here, and then we'll shift into kind of some other open Q&A and things of that nature, is the fact that I can have an automatic workflow analyze against anybody that has an iWave score and start to do a few key things. So notice if I put everybody who's in that group, such as number 4, into this, the system can analyze that and actually enroll them into an automatic workflow to flag them as a favorite, assign as a prospect, and start to create a follow-up activity. And so this is where you're going to be able to free up and find your hidden gems. What you do is you look at how your database of record is intaking data and how something like an iWave score is also living alongside of that, and then you can build processes around engagement for those specific people. So maybe it's like, I want to make sure that they get a mailing after a few days. I want to make sure that we set up a meeting with the people who have maybe a certain amount of gifts. And so really all this is doing is using native functionality and thinking how it works in concert with each other. And so peer-to-peer is pretty key in terms of this, because you want to get these people as quickly as possible into your sphere of engagement and really focus in on retention of those folks, because as you see, once you get them by year 3, it's really going to accelerate. And so that's kind of the key concept here in terms of your data amplification. Once you're using a platform like RallyBound and iWave together around your database of record, you'll be able to actually zero in on the specific people that you should be hunting for. All right. So we're going to ask a quick poll in terms of if you're interested in learning more about what we've been talking about today. You know, we kind of zero it in on a few key things, so let's just kind of launch that, and then also open it up for general Q&A, because as we enter end of the year for strategy and stuff like that, we want to be able to empower you with, like, okay, so once you know, I am actually talking to these people, maybe what should I be doing? And you know, we have myself and Trent here would be happy to kind of dive into more of the broader strategy, irregardless of the platforms that you may be using. And so that's kind of the fun thing that we'd love to help you with right now. So we'll go ahead and
yeah, Tim, I just wanted to jump in and say thanks for that demo. I think it's, you know, it's a lot to take in with what we talked about today, and it's a whirlwind tour through there. But I think hopefully people saw that, you know, what we were talking about before is really the value of combining that internal knowledge, that internal data, that's living in the CRM, wherever it may have originated, with the external, and it's really the combination of the two that allows the best action. So the workflows is a great example to be able to, you know, take advantage of everything that you now know, and decide what's the right path. So that's, you know, I think it's fantastic to be able to do this in a system like Nyan CRM, or as Tim mentioned, we also work with Salesforce, but it's, you know, to be able to do it in the system that your data resides, instead of, as Greg Fitzgerald mentioned from the Oregon Rail Heritage Foundation, it's instead of doing the swivel chair integration and being in all these different systems, trying to piece things together. It's fantastic to have a platform like Nyan One.
Well, and that's the key here, because there's a lot of things that people should be doing when it comes to their data, and just kind of drilling down and engaging things in a way that's going to make sense for your organization. And so you know, I think it's important that we as fundraisers, what we should be doing is mapping out the donor journey as this person enters into our sphere. And so so once we understand how a donor gets into our database of record, then what we could do is build processes around that for overall engagement. And the point ultimately around peer-to-peer fundraising is that you can't treat these folks like they came in through a gala, or that they're a corporate donor, or that they maybe answered your annual appeal. Peer-to-peer donors are actually inherently different. They're a different type of donor, and they're one that has less of an affinity for your organization, which is why it's actually key to potentially even screen against those people first, because then it creates a pipeline for your major gift officers or executive director or the board members that may be helping, and being able to drill down and say, okay, let's prioritize these 10 people who came in because of our you know, recent campaign run through RallyBound, something like that. Trent, we did have a question in terms of, like, how does iWave work with other systems? Specifically, somebody was asking about Blackbaud, and kind of, you know, what's your maybe way we can kind of structure this question is how does iWave generally try to work with any database potentially?
Yeah, so as Tim mentioned, we definitely work with other solutions, other platforms. So specific to Blackbaud, we do have an integration with Blackbaud, although I will say it's somewhat different. It's not very different. It's somewhat different in that Blackbaud isn't as partner friendly as Nyan and some of our other friends. So the integration is not as flexible, but it does enable similar capability to get the iWave data into your Blackbaud CRM, so you can now house it in one place, leverage it, and, you know, build it into that full picture of your prospect or your donors. So we do work with Blackbaud. Today we've got integration with the Razor's Edge product. We are just finalizing an update to our NXT So we work with both of those. And I saw another question around, other platforms like in the Salesforce world. So yeah, we work in the Salesforce world. So whatever you may have plugged in on the other end, we can do the same process as Tim mentioned, right? So wherever that data is coming from, if you've got that CRM as your central point and central repository, we're able to be on the other end of that workflow and give you some intelligence on the data that's flowing in and some prioritization of that data that's flowing in.
Well, and this is important because the idea of ensuring things are integrated together is a key trend that's already been cited for 2020, where a lot of platforms are trying to move toward a more integrated approach. But at least for Nyan One, what we've been doing is we've been working on this for 5 years. It's literally my job, is to focus in on ensuring that no matter who you are, that there's going to be a actual documented integrated approach for your organization to be able to leverage. And especially when there's flexibility for RallyBound, for something like Salesforce, for something like Nyan CRM, to get at the data in a lot of different ways. As long as it intersects with your database of record, you'll then be able to kick into high gear with these other types of integrations. It's about using things in concert with each other and then having a strategy around what happens once that data kicks in. And really, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing here. We still have definitely a little bit of time for questions. Trent, also, what did you? It sounded like you had something special for the Nyan CRM folks that might be.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of based on what we just mentioned in the last couple of minutes, and the importance of being able to bring things together into one system, and it seems like the trend to moving even further down that path as we move into 2020. iWave got an exclusive offer for Nyan CRM users. Everyone's going to look a little bit different, so I don't have a specific, price of the offer, but everyone's screening requirements will typically look a little bit different. But I encourage you to follow up with our team if you are a Nyan CRM user today, and you're interested in the screening, because we've got a limited time offer, just to kind of help through the year end and help you get a fast start into 2020 and sifting through that haystack, or as my marketing team would rather I say it, find the hidden gems. So again, I just encourage you to
P2P gems, folks. Hashtag
P2P gems. I encourage you to reach out. It actually is a pretty good offer just for our Nyan CRM users. So not to imply that iWave doesn't work with others, but we wanted to acknowledge that we were last but not least in the webinar series, and say thanks to our Nyan friends as well.
Well, we really appreciate that, and we're really proud to be working with the folks over at iWave to kind of zero in on these types of things. Here's our contact information if you wanted to kind of reach out personally to us. Still watching for any maybe final questions on strategy as we enter end of the year around. If you're running any peer-to-peer campaigns, be interested to hear about that, especially. I'm in Chicago right now, and not many run walks, but people might be doing polar plunges and things of that nature. Or maybe you're down south and you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, Trent, any final thoughts before we kind of sign off here today? And we will be following up. We're going to put this recording into the partner channel on YouTube for Nyan One. We also have a lot of other great resources for you in that partner channel as well. But any final thoughts, Trent?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time, and thank you, Tim, for sharing the time with us. And I just want to say that there was a lot. We delivered a lot of high level stuff today. There's obviously lots of information and details behind it. So I wanted to let everyone know that there's a whole team at iWave ready to dive into some details. So don't think that what you heard from me today is the end of the story.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, folks. I wish you best of luck for your year-end campaigns, and let's end it on a high note. Trent, thanks again to you and the iWave team for being part of the Nyan One ecosystem. Folks, we'll be in touch, and have a great holiday season as we enter the final days of 2019.